Alright, and we're back. With the waxwork plot, the final cross-examination of the final testimony of the final part of the final day of this final trial. Let's do this. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside his jacket.
Hold it!
From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Did you have any idea of who was? Did you have any idea of who was behind it? There are very few people in the know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. But anyway, I'd never heard of this engineer, so no, I had no idea. Yet, despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it? I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret was my only concern. But the hose has bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Scotland Yard's reputation will be immeasurably damaged as a result of all this. Yes, thank you, Lord Van Zeeks. I am well aware of that. So, as I understand it, what you found in the birdcage was the waxwork model. Where then was the victim's body? The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. So you knew about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick then? It was quite obvious what had happened with the victim and the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower, and the waxwork? I've wrapped it up and sent it by carriage to the specified address at the specified time. And why were you given such directions? Presumably so it could be recovered by Drebber and returned to Madame Tussauds. I see. And then you put the birdcage back on the experimentation stage. Yeah, although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I'd made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this? Yeah, the instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of fabricate some evidence to make it clear that hairbrain alone could have killed Asman. So, you mean that was your doing? I fetched Hairbrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage and took it with me, alone, to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen. Alone, Doctor? I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. There was a vault under the stage where I found the birdcage lying in the dirt. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. And then you noted that in your fake autopsy report as a fictitious case of death. Exactly. So, the actual cause of death was the trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop. My word. What is it, Mr. Sato? Something about Dr. Sithe's last statement is playing on my mind, that's all. Yeah, mine too. Dr. Sithe? There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. The defense calls for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony. Oh? Which part? What I want her to supplement her testimony with is... What's the fishy part here? The fall? Death by fall, or... what she did after he died? I don't know. What's more important? Okay, let's look at the core record. What can I counter that with? We got the hole here. The head, the autopsy report, science trophy, the glass, the camera, photograph of Drebber, the bird cage. Photograph of balloon. Screwdriver. Autopsy. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what's important here. Let's say the real cause of death. The real cause of death being the fall of 30 feet. That part. Fine, if that's what you want. Just stop yelling, please.
The prosecution concurs.
Oh. Very well. You will supplement your testimony now, witness. If you wish, my lord. The actual cause of death was the neck trauma Asman suffered from the 30-foot fall. You're quite sure of that? It was a result of a broken neck? Yes, as a professional that was more apparent. More than apparent. You'd never know just by looking at the photograph of the victim though, would you? No, that's very true. Obviously not. This is precisely why coroners are needed to determine the actual facts. Yeah, assuming they can be trusted.
There's no point calling her assessment into question without evidence. Let's get back to the testimony.
Very well. I enlisted the help of the entire forensic investigation team to dress the scene appropriately. The entire team? In preventing the course of justice? My team consists of the very best investigators there are. I demand loyalty from all members. We operate on a code of chivalry of sorts. You aid and abet a murderer, commit perjury, and dare talk to chivalry? It was a matter of priorities. What? Nothing was more important than protecting the secret of the professor. My team did what was necessary without losing sight of the primary goal. I consider their conduct exemplary. Oh! Don't concede the point, Mr. Naruhodo. You mustn't let her win. I need a lawyer. I'll take that silence as a tacit acceptance. Now, can we move on? The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. But at what cost? Faith in Scotland Yard is gonna suffer a terrible blow as a result of this.
And your precious secret is out now anyway.
Yes, as you say. And I take full responsibility.
Blow me down! Touch yourself!
Surely there was some other way you could have protected the secret. No, there really wasn't. I've done my utmost, believe me. In many ways, I respect your determination. Whew, I nearly froze under that cold stare as she said that. I do believe she was being genuine though, Mr. Naruhodo. So, that's her story. She has admitted everything and revealed her full involvement in the crime. I do wonder if there could be really be much more to it. Well, I don't know, but I just have a feeling. Do you, Mr. Naruhodo? The truth is, I find it strange too. how those two are reacting to this in completely opposite ways, I mean. Yeah, exactly. For some reason, I feel sure they're still trying to hide something. Okay. Okay. Alright, well, we can't say that it doesn't look like he had a broken neck, because she just said that coroners have more expertise. So maybe not. Maybe Van Zieks concurs to either things. Let's do this again, and then let's make her amend her testimony about the part in which what she did after stabbing the victim. Let's try that. Come on, seriously? Where's my auto skip? Come on. I'm sure there's something here on the testimony. You know, if you think it would be appropriate, I'm sure you could ask Dr. Sithe to change the supplementary testimony she gave before. What should I ask her to do with the statement she added? Dr. Sithe, what you said before about what you did to the victim's body, I believe that may be significant. So, could you change your supplementary statement to explain that instead? Very well. I stood over the victim's corpse where it lay in the toppled cage and plunged the screwdriver into the chest. So it was you who stabbed Mr. Asman with this? Yes, far easier than dissection, I assure you. No precision required. What a welcome change. The victim died instantly from a stabbed neck. All I did was carry out the instructions that had been given.
As unflinchingly as ever, no doubt. I imagine you didn't bat an eyelid when you drove the weapon into his body.
There was no need to bat my eyelids. And what else did you do to twist the facts? Remind the court, why don't you? If you wish. Okay. The toppled cage and plunged the screwdriver into the chest. Okay. It's in the chest region, so no contradiction there. Oh, just the fact that he was behind the cage? Like how could she do that? She had to have to open the cage, right?
Objection.
No? Okay. It's gotta be that, though. It's gotta be that. It's gotta be something related to that. She didn't tell us that she opened the cage. She stood over the corpse while it was inside the cage and she stabbed him. Like, how does that... Come on.
Objection.
There we go. I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth.
What on earth is the matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue?
I apologize, my lord. Dr. Sithe, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation.
Out with it, my learned friend.
There is an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph, which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events that led to his death.
The court has already examined the photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from it.
Yes, we have already considered it, that's true. But we now know the facts to be different.
What do you mean?
I believe we should let the defense explain. Where in this photograph would we see the alleged inconsistency with the witness's statement?
I don't know. The glass? The shards of glass? I don't know. But obviously the picture was taken after the body was taken from underneath the stage and onto the exhibit, so... What's the inconsistency? The blood? The blood pouring out? Oh, the blood pouring out? Meaning that when she stabbed him he was bleeding, that means he was still alive? Is that it? Look closely at the blood stain on the victim's chest. It clearly extends in a down... Oh, I didn't even think of that. It clearly extends in a downwards direction towards the man's feet.
And why is that significant, Kazu? If the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine was set in motion, that's entirely expected. Ah! Of course! No, that's not what happened.
Exactly, my lord. Dr. Sithe made it very clear in testimony just now that the point at which she stole Professor Hairbrain's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion, when the birdcage had fallen below the stage out of sight. From the shape of it, it's clear that the birdcage would have fallen on its side after the 30-foot drop. And if the victim had really been stabbed while inside the birdcage in that position, the blood from the wound would have spread out equally in all directions. For it to have formed the longitudinal appearance we see in this picture is inconceivable. Given that the victim's blood seeped vertically downward from the wound, it must be the case that when you stabbed Mr. Asman, he was standing up. In short, Dr. Sithe, your latest testimony was a total fabrication. I knew it. I was right. Now I've identified that contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here.
What? What sort of misapprehension?
Dr. Sithe? You claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Draper as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant. And you claim that you authored a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie, because the question of what the bloodstain really tells us has only one possible answer.
If that is the case, what is it, man?
Kazu, you've clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Sithe's story is shown to be a lie by the contradiction in her testimony?
Obviously. Dr. Sithe, clearly you weren't really coerced by some letter at all. But, if you were, where is the note? It's nowhere to be seen. That's as may be. So why don't you present it to the court? If the assertion vexes you? Obviously, I've already disposed of it, and I'm not vexed in the slightest.
Kazu, need I remind you that it was you yourself who established the coercion? I'm afraid that little cry is insufficient recompense for such a blunder. I shall have to penalize you.
Feeling vexed, my Nipponese friend?
Very. But there's no question that the coroner's testimony was built on a tremendous lie.
Which part of Dr. Sithe's story is shown to be a lie about the contradiction in her testimony?
He didn't die by falling? His neck wasn't... You say that You say that you examined the body and wrote this report based on your findings. But that's a blatant lie, isn't it? I'm sorry, but I simply can't fathom what you're attempting to say. The truth is, you had your subordinates do the work for you, and they authored the report. But then you wielded your superiority over them and claimed the credit for yourself. Can you honestly say that's not what happened? Yes, I can honestly say that's not what happened. Well, good. Glad to hear.
What on earth was the purpose of that exchange, Council?
Visits fast never end.
Believe me, I'm trying. There's no question to Coroner's Asman built. Okay, so okay. The stabbing. She didn't stab him? The answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. If, when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards as it did, we can be sure that the victim must have been either sitting or standing upright at the time.
But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen on its side when it fell beneath the stage.
Yes, it would. Which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord.
Objection! That's impossible! The man was dead, remember?
No, that is the misapprehension. When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with considerable force. But Mr. Asman didn't die in the fall. He probably lost consciousness for a while, but when he came round, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage, just as Dr. Sithe appeared. If the victim was in fact alive at that point in time, it changes everything. Ugh. Mr. Odie Asman's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Hairbrain, nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Sithe.
Order! Can this possibly be true?
Have you been taking me for a fool? It was you, was it? You killed him?
You hoped that by admitting to being an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme, the trial would end, before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder.
Oh, do shut up! You're so desperate now, you're making all this up, as if I would do something like that.
I assure you, the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Mr. Naruhodo has established the facts using evidence and logic alone.
Ha! Logic? Don't make me laugh. Sadly, your logic has a gaping hole in it. What? What do you mean? I'd have thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. What possible reason would I have to kill Mr. Asman?
Asman was involved in any number of criminal activities, from coercion to theft to murder. But there's no known connection to Dr. Sithe there.
I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched.
True, there's no obvious motive, but there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this. Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report, but murdering someone for no reason is a very different story. No, when you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asman, Something did come to mind. What?
What was it, Counsel? Enlighten the court at once.
Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seemed strange, but we had no reason to suspect it at the time. There's a particular object that explains why Dr. Sithe would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. Okay. I don't wanna... I've only got one chance left. This is... all or nothing now. One chance, 3 choices. Here we go. The Iron Mask? Why? No. I don't see any reason behind that. Scalpels? No. Screwdriver? Huh. He was gonna stab her with a screwdriver, so she fought back? I don't know. It's the screwdriver. Or should I say, Master Andrew. You're not making any sense. Huh? Sorry, Mr. Naruhodo, but how is Professor Hairbrain's trusty tool related to the motive? I can't really explain that myself, actually. Clearly you have no idea what you're talking about. I think I must have said the wrong thing. Forgive the interruption, Dr. Sithe, but what my colleague meant to say was scalpels. Perhaps that makes a little more sense to you? Ah, scalpels, of course.
Did you say scalpels?
I did say scalpels, Doctor. It would appear that word has struck a chord. You... Come on, out with it. It was yesterday when we visited your laboratory. Oh, the 500... Look at this big thick book here. Ah, it appears to be an accounting ledger. It's a record for... It's a record of the forensic investigation team spending, I think. 500 or 5,000 scalpels or whatever. It's clear that the team supplies on a monthly basis, but... Well, one entry seems rather strange. Really? In what way? They're buying 500 scalpels every month. What does that have to do with... I don't get it yet.
500 scalpels? A month?
At first, I wondered what on earth you could be using that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts.
Asman's criminal organization relied heavily on extortion for its funding. Tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward.
10 years ago, when Mr. Asman was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber, he may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Sithe's darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade.
Her darkest secret? Good lord, you mean...
I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago, but clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely out of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asman in the heart with all your might. To silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. You'll never understand. None of you. What we've had to keep covered up all these long years. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb. The truth of this case can never be properly established. unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Sithe will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you have done and tell the court the truth about what happened.
"10 years ago, you chose a truce, and you were robbed of your bright and successful future as a result. I can certainly understand your bitterness, and your concentration now on your consternation. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years.
Super high voltage instantaneous kinesis. I mean, really.
Oh.
It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypothesis, their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness.
Careful, Mr. Jabba.
I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it?
So you admit it. You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim?
Yes, I admit it. I did it all in the name of revenge.
Revenge for the future that Mr. Asman's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asman, did it?
Which is where that very particular waxwork comes in. Yes, I see.
The condemned convict that you saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago, if your account of those events was all true,
then obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened. Even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had.
So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well, or on Dr. Sithe to be precise.
It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asman turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And he happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who'd handled that bogus autopsy being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan.
What a horrid tale.
He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him, for revenge, and have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I'd had to suffer.
Your actions against those who'd ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you?
Did I?
Professor Harebrain's only crime was passion for his hypothesis. But you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man.
I...
Lord Van Zieks, what of Dr. Sithe?
An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted, and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days, along with Mr. Jabba.
A most regrettable situation indeed. She has made great contributions to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow. However, that is a topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Hairbrain... yeah? It seems there was a great deal more to our experiment than you realize. However, I think we can assume now that all the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt.
This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. I mean, this dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered, and above all, a fool. Professor, I've spent my life thinking of nothing but my research, misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to, despite my lack of talent. And so far over these, in the process, I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I.
No, Professor, that's not true.
But
Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Jabba. What happened was his doing, and his alone. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way.
Lord Van Zieks,
As a derision with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even. The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that is laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices.
oh. Thank you, Baroque.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Yes, my lord.
it is this court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge of which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections?
None for me, my lord.
Certainly not.
This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision.
It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever.
What's that? He's done, is he? It's all over?
I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognize the place.
Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant not guilty. Court is adjourned.
It's over. That was some trial. It was indeed. But now we can put all of that behind us. Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is, it is. Congratulations, Professor Hairbrain.
Mr. Naruhodo, Mr. Sato, I am truly beside myself with gratitude. How can I ever thank you enough?
I'm just glad it's all been cleared up. That you realize you were just caught up in a bad situation.
Right now, you know, if I had thus you just got money. I'd give the whole lot to you, every penny.
Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so... We don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough.
Oh dear. Oh, what can I do? Aha. How about this? As a memento. The paper, but my hypothesis is inside.
Well, just as a memento then. Thank you. I've been wondering, Professor, what are you going to do now?
Oh my. Yeah, what am I going to do? My hypothesis and my great machine lie in the ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the great exhibition whilst I'm here too, and see if new inspiration hits me.
Oh yes, that's a wonderful idea.
Oh, can't allow that.
Oh,
I can't allow that.
Lord Van Zieks? What are you doing in here?
Baroque.
I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert.
Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down on your prey.
You're one of the few true friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody else to handle the prosecution. Or the defense.
Sorry? Or the defense. Did I just hear that right?
I always knew that you had my best interest at heart. Don't worry. How about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on.
Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I will accompany you.
What?
From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets.
But nine! Hold on a minute, Baroque. What about the great exhibition? This is the chance of a lifetime for me. I want to look around.
No! No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea.
Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Baroque. Lord Van Zieks.
What's all this about?
A necessary precaution.
Yes, I think I understand.
You do?
Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zieks at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing.
Yeah, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time and thinking it was nice for him to ask.
The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well, even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor.
You mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas?
Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up to now.
But of course, we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent.
True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend.
But Baroque.
Like the moustache Japanese, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once.
Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any say in it? Goodness, was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Zieks? In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, This man seems absolutely merciless, and yet... sometimes I feel as though I don't understand him at all.
It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being.
Yeah, alright. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything. Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Best wishes, Professor Hairbrain. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now.
Now, my Japanese friend.
Oh, yes? I thought he'd gone too.
We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time?
You want to talk with me?
I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes.
Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The Enigma, Barak Van Zeeks. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes, then.
So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice.
Yes, I think so. I'm relieved, at least, that the man's innocence could be proven.
Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my animosity towards you Nipponese comes from.
Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now, I think differently. You clearly know our ways, so I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please?
The professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest.
He took your brother's life.
Clint. My brother was Clint Van Zeeks. 16 years ago, when I was just still in my teens, he was already the director of prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and other nations then too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan.
Oh, if it was 16 years ago, then one of them could have been my father.
Of course, I remember Dr. Makatoba well.
I had no idea.
I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office, when Clint introduced me to the 3 visiting Nipponese.
So you've actually met my father?
He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it made a very great impression upon me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved.
I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. Truly.
Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway, so he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time.
In plain sight?
Are you aware of political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires.
A new treaty was being forged, I think.
Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our two nations could very well have ended up at war.
What? A war? Between Britain and Japan? But that would mean... Oh my, you mean to say that the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time. Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Father. What? Father? Kazuma! My best friend, Kazuma Asogi. After a whole year, finally his memories returned. As he stood there before me. Ryunosuke. Hello again. My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba.
It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
I owe you thanks, too, for taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh. Haruma, a great blade of the Asogi clan, passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. The Japanese man's katana is his soul, and he couldn't be parted from it. But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared. With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last. Father.
Are you saying... Surely not. You mean, you knew all this time? I'm looking at it, but I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke, we have much to talk about, but now is not the time. I'll be seeing you.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
So, he's a living after-image of the man who took my brother's life, is he?
Yeah, Kazuma Asoge, my best friend.
3 months ago, when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there. Some connection.
But why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Van Zeek's apprentice? And when he was suffering amnesia too?
The man was apprehended, even executed. But his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked.
And that's all Van Zeek said before he left us in the courtroom.
10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me, it was the first time I'd ever seen him.
Poor Susato-san. All this is tied up with painful memories for her too. She's never talked about this with me before though.
It took time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son, a boy 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you have worked out, That young man's name was Kazuma Asogi. So you see, that's how he and I met.
Alright, cool, cool.
For a brief moment,
Oh.
my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter, but in many, it was the start of a new one.
And didn't bother to say that yourself, did you? Generic voice actor.